TYT is dead. Long live TYT. That the model of a charismatic Cenk Uygur, who is the president and CEO over his own little corporation that people trust is going to be progressive. That model has to die. Why? Because that model has failed us time and again. That model is what the North Star was supposed to be. Where is it today, Sean King? That model is what we built with Bernie Sanders. That model is what we built with Barack Obama. And I see how much we, the people, entrusted in those movements, into those organizations, into those charismatic leaders. And as soon as those elections were over, where did all the infrastructure go? Where did all the email lists go? Where did the ability to mobilize the masses into a movement go? That model of progressive leadership is dead. TYT is dead. Long live TYT. So by now you've seen every interview, you've seen every analysis, you've seen more than enough videos as to the problem with what Cenk Uygur is doing and using TYT to accomplish, he and Kasparian. I want to say it from the outset that this is not a video to attack TYT as an entity. In fact, it is an appeal to Cenk Uygur to preserve and to save TYT for what it was, what people invested in it to be. And that means that there is a model of leadership that has to go away. This is not an attack on TYT. In fact, I hope that this is a way that TYT can be preserved, because as it stands right now, the trajectory that Cenk Uygur has chosen has been rejected by the people. The very people who helped build his platform, the very people who gave rise to his voice. He is in the position that he is in, not because of his own ingenuity, but because the people trusted in him as a charismatic leader who was going to do what he said he was going to do. So no, this is not an attack on TYT. But before the end of this video, and I hope that I can keep your attention for as long as possible, but before the end of this video, you will see I am making a case, a strong case for the preservation of TYT. But TYT will not survive if it continues to go underneath the same model that has beguiled all of progressives for many years. It's not a problem that is just germane to TYT. It is a problem in progressive spaces holistically. What is that problem? It is the idea of a charismatic leader being entrusted with all of our funds, all of our resources, all of our subscriptions, all of our memberships, and those resources going into a privately held corporation over which that one individual leader has complete domination and control, their own personal fiefdom. TYT is not the fiefdom of Cenk Uygur. At least it should not be. What TYT is and what it represents more than anything else, I'm not talking about the corporate entity over which I'm sure Cenk Uygur has solid and solidified control over. But what TYT represented for the people here in the United States of America was ostensibly an independent media movement sponsored and supported by the viewers so that they could be free from any type of corporate control and so that they can be free to represent the interests of the people. That's not where we are right now. And so when I say TYT is dead, I mean the model of American progressives pouring millions of dollars into an individual corporation, thinking that the president or the CEO of that corporation is someone that we can trust is going to operate based on progressive values when political times get hard, when financial times get hard, when any type of issue gets too difficult. We expect progressive leaders to hold the line for progressive values. And time and again, nearly every single entity, every entity in which we have entrusted our resources, where are they now? Where are they now? Where is the leftist media entity that is standing up, that has the amount of resources that TYT has been entrusted to lead us in this moment? I've written an article to accompany this video so that everyone can be crystal clear on what I'm saying and what I'm not saying, and more precisely why I am saying this. I don't intend on doing many more videos at all about TYT. I do want to give this one last thought from me on the issue. There's a lot to dig into, and I really do suggest that you read the article so that the thoughts can be outlined for you more clearly than I'm even capable of doing in this video. But I do want to go over some of the key parts here, some of the key nuances, some of the key issues. Here's the difference between left-wing media and right-wing media and mainstream media. And it's in this intersection that I believe we will absolutely find what happened in 2024, why there was such a definitive shift towards the right across this nation. That's because right-wing media for the last 4 years has been funded, almost like a slush fund, and never-ending supply of cash being poured into right-wing media from all over the planet, to be quite honest. Of course, you had American billionaires pouring resources nonstop into organizations like Charlie Kirk and Turning Points USA, into the Daily Wire with all the venture capital that they had, with the ability to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on advertising on YouTube alone. We had podcast after podcast after podcast, every up-and-coming MAGA superstar with a new YouTube channel, with a new podcast, with a new web series. Everywhere we turned, we were inundated with right-wing media. That had a definitive effect on the outcome of the election. If you take away right-wing media between 2020 and 2024, you do not have a second term of Donald Trump. And this is what makes what TYT is doing. And again, let me correct myself. It's not TYT as in so much as it is the leader of TYT, the owner of TYT, Cenk Uygur. This is what makes what Cenk Uygur is doing so damaging right now. And this is why I'm doing this final video on the matter. And then I'm moving on because there's so many more things that we have to fight for and things that we need to do. We can't grieve over the loss of TYT much longer. We have work that we have to get done. If you look at the amount of conservative media that saturated the United States over the past 4 years, there's no way that you can conclude anything other than the fact that we have been underneath a regime, a media regime that has manufactured consent and shaped and warped the minds of the average American viewer towards MAGA conservatism, which is, just like Cenk Uygur stated months before, fascism.
So they laid out a plan for a full-blown coup against this country. And then they executed that plan. And they even considered, they had a 3-hour meeting where Michael Flynn proposed martial law and rolling out tanks against the American people and killing anyone who opposed us. And the only reason why they didn't do that part of it, because to be fair to the rest of the people in the Trump administration at the time, they said to Trump, every one of us will resign if you roll out those tanks. He wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole.
There's no question about it. This was not the United States organically moving closer to Donald Trump. This was the fact that every time you cut on the television, there's Fox News, Newsmax, OANN. Every time you go onto YouTube, whether you're watching a progressive or not, the algorithm recommends someone from conservative spaces. And even if the algorithm wasn't organically recommending someone from the right wing of the United States of America, conservatives had millions of dollars that they could spend on advertising, putting them and placing themselves right in your face so that no matter where you went in this country, you were inundated with a right-wing message. And it went further. Elon Musk purchasing Twitter for $44 billion, turning it into a right-wing echo chamber over the last 2 years leading up to the election. And instantly we saw all of the techniques, all of the mechanisms, all of the ways that the progressive movement made progress over the last 10 years become co-opted and weaponized against progress. And that's how you get the rightward shift of the United States of America. Cenk Uygur in multiple interviews has ceded the point that, oh, look, conservatives won, and so we must go over there and negotiate with them, not addressing the underlying factor that caused conservatives, MAGA, to win, which is exactly up his alley. Media. How did conservatives win? How did MAGA win? Media. How did they win? Media on YouTube, media on Facebook. How did they win? Social media. How did they win? Mainstream media. How did they win? Media. That's how conservatives, that's how MAGA won. And this is exactly the profession of Cenk Uygur, media. And what does he do immediately after Donald Trump wins? He goes to conservative media and he surrenders. He doesn't go to conservative media in order to fight. He doesn't go to conservative media to hold the line. He goes to conservative media in order to gain acceptance. Now, the question is why? Originally, I said he's a traitor. And that's still a very strong possibility. Then I thought more about it. I said, well, maybe he has financial constraints concerning all of the money that he took from Republican investors over the years. Maybe times are hard and he's just going to do whatever he has to do to make sure his company stays afloat. I completely empathize with that. That does not mean I agree with what he's doing, but I can empathize with that. And then I considered a third consideration. As I look back at old interviews and episodes of the Young Turks and I listen to Cenk Uygur describe the threat that MAGA really is, I'm convinced that Cenk Uygur 100% understands that MAGA is a true fascistic threat.
Every one of us will resign if you roll out those tanks. He wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole. So, and here I'll upset a bunch of people on the left. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are not fascists. They're terrible people for other reasons, but they've never done a coup against America. They don't use direct Nazi quotes that Trump does. The only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once. And guys, last thing. The other day, he said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. That quote has only been used by Adolf Hitler and Donald J. Trump. So he's telling you ahead of time, I'm a Nazi. It's not like I didn't warn you. I used absurd Hitler quotes. I pulled them out of history and I said them for no reason, just to let you know I am a Nazi. He then, remember, he had dinner with Nazis. Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, they had dinner talking about how the Holocaust wasn't so bad and Hitler was a hero. Those are things Fuentes has said. Those are things Kanye West has said. He happily had dinner with those Nazis. And when the Nazis marched and said the Jews will not replace us, he said there are good people on the Nazi side. How many times does he have to tell you that he's a Nazi before you believe him?
I'm convinced that Cenk Uygur 100% understands that MAGA is a true fascistic threat, that they will carry out authoritarianism and totalitarianism. They will use political violence. I honestly, when I look at what Cenk was saying before the election, I see someone who sees the threat exactly the way I see it currently today, that these people will absolutely have public executions if we allow them. If they were allowed to do it, Cenk Uygur knows that these people will start throwing people on the wall. They would throw them in prison. They will persecute, they will torture, and they will even publicly execute people if they are given the opportunity. That's what I believe Cenk Uygur believes, because you can't go from everything that he said before the election and just throw that away. So what am I saying? The third possibility as to why Cenk Uygur is turning code is the fact that maybe, just maybe, Cenk Uygur sees the threat. He knows that it's a threat. And the best strategy that he has to combat the threat is to surrender to them as a sacrifice, to be the vector, to be the entity in their spaces that softens them and pushes back against their violent tendencies. What do I mean? I mean that by Cenk going to Turning Points USA and saying, we can disagree, let's fight, but let's go have a beer.
And the number one thing to hold your ground on is constitutional rights. So I'm going to do some...
Like the Second Amendment.
So, no, I know. So guys, look at that. We totally disagree on that issue, but we just...
You were asking for that one, I'm sorry.
No problem. No, but look, but that was an important moment, because we totally disagree on that issue, But we just shook hands anyway. And you know what we'll do afterwards? We'll have a beer.
By Cenk going to Turning Points USA and saying, we can disagree, let's fight, but let's go have a beer. He's trying to set the Overton window for the actions that MAGA will take to say, okay, we don't like them, we disagree with them, but afterwards, let's go have a beer. Now, stick with me. I'm not here to defend Cenk. I am not here to praise Caesar. I'm here to bury Caesar. But in good faith, I have to slow down and ask myself to consider this as well as you. I do believe that there's a possibility that Cenk Uygur honestly knows how violent these monsters are, and that he is in those spaces enough to be able to convey a message that says, at least let's not get violent. Well, I considered that. And I take that to heart. And I do think that there's a bit of nobility to that. Cenk Uygur, if that is your justification of doing what you are doing, I want to say two things to you. Number one, you're still wrong, and I'll explain why in a second. But number two, I can respect that. I think that there's a bit of nobility in that. I'm giving you as much grace and consideration as I can, because you don't strike me as a person who's just a traitor who turns on a dime like that. You did betray us. You are actively betraying us. But I had to dig a little deeper and say, but why? I don't think that it could be just financial troubles, but that could be it. I paused and I really considered, well, what if Cenk is doing this to try to stop MAGA from going full fangs out violent, which many of them really want to do? If that is what you're doing, Cenk, then you'll understand what I'm going to do here next. Because what I see what you're doing is you're putting yourself inside of a dialectic, MAGA's dialectic. And what you're trying to do is to help them to resolve their tension, their new synthesis of where they're going to go, what they're going to do, what they're going to become next. I see you trying to say, whatever we do, let's not get violent. Let's disagree. Let's fight. And then let's go have a beer. Even the more I say it, the more nobility I see in it. But Cenk, you're wrong. Because they cannot be appeased. We've seen in history what happens when we try to appease fascists. Chamberlain understood too late what happens when you try to appease fascists. Czechoslovakia, 1938, tried to appease the Nazis. What happened? It emboldened the Nazis to go even further. So Cenk, while I could be honestly just making this up in my head, maybe you're not doing this. Maybe you're not trying to stave off the worst aspects and desires of MAGA, but I do think it's a possibility. And I want you to know that I'm engaging in good faith, and I have to take that in consideration. And when I consider that thought, I feel a level of empathy. I feel a level of nobility towards you. I feel that you're operating with a sense of honor and integrity if that is your motivation. Anything short of that feels like you're a traitor. But when I consider that possibility, I pause and I think, okay, I see what he's doing. Here's the problem, Cenk. If that is what you're doing, and I know you would only be doing it because you feel like it's severely needed at this time. Here's the balance to your calculus. Here's the balance to your equation. You cannot simultaneously be the self-proclaimed leader of the left. You cannot simultaneously be the self-proclaimed leader of the leftist wing of the populist movement. And you cannot simultaneously boast of being the leader and the owner of the largest progressive media company in the world while you simultaneously surrender to MAGA. Even if your intentions are noble, Cenk, even if what you're trying to do is to stave off the rabidly violent tendencies that are latent in MAGA, just waiting for the opportunity to come out. I thank you for that consideration if that's what you're doing. But you cannot be the leader that progressives need in this moment. Who is that leader? None of us are. And all of us are. I want to state that at the beginning. I am not promoting myself nor any other individual to be the leader of the progressive leftist movement. It does not work like that, and it cannot work like that any longer, which is why I have called this video, as well as the article, TYT is dead. Long live TYT. The structure over the last 20 years of progressive movements has been centered around charismatic leaders who become their own lords and their own barons, lording over their fiefdom. And what is that fiefdom? That fiefdom is audience, paid subscriptions, email lists, communication networks, even opportunities. From Barack Obama, who came in on the wings of a progressive movement, to Bernie Sanders, who came in on a hotter version, on the next iteration of that same progressive movement in the political realm. What did they do? They created a fiefdom over their resources. And both of those political movements that we poured resources in financially, we gave email addresses to, we helped create and sustain an entire network that reached millions of people across this nation at the drop of a dime, at the push of a send of an email. We were able to reach millions of people through these charismatic leaders. What happens when those charismatic leaders move on to something else? Bernie Sanders' email list now in the hands of the same Democratic consultants that frustrate us today. Same with Barack Obama. Let's go to the media. In the media, we had individuals like Cenk Uygur, TYT, who became the cornerstone of the progressive movement. And thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people poured millions upon millions of dollars into this organization. But it was not a decentralized organization. It was Cenk Uygur's personal fiefdom, where he controls every aspect of that company, where he determines what's going to happen, where he determines what's coming up and what's not going to happen. He determines the trajectory of TYT, not the people. And so when I say TYT is dead, long live TYT, what has to die in progressive spaces is this idea of a singular charismatic leader who is going to carry us to victory. Why? Because every time we have done that, we pour resources into that individual's organizations, and that individual's organization is usually something that they control alone, something that they dictate alone. And even if there are other people involved, those individuals hoard over those. How many of you have? Think about all of the progressive movements that you've donated to. Think about all of the progressive movements that you poured money into and given your email address to. Think about all of the entities that came and went. It's not just Cenk Uygur. I'm thinking also about Sean King. Think about all of the charismatic leaders that you poured resources into. Where are they right now? Name me one charismatic leader over the last 20 years of the progressive movement that is still holding the line. It's not even me, because I've only been on the scene for the last 10 years. And even if I had been here for 20 years, I will still tell you this. What progressive and leftists need right now is decentralized leadership. We need the ability to organize ourselves, to move into action ourselves, to reach each other ourselves, to not have to wait for permission to get an email out from an organization that has a corporate agenda. Why? Because they have corporate interests. Why? Because they want to grow. They wanted to build. They wanted to expand. They wanted to get bigger studios. They wanted to get bigger office spaces. And so now they have bills, they have debt, and they have to do what corporate America says do, what their corporate investors say do, even though they still claim to be progressive and people-driven and people-funded. We've poured resources into individual leaders too long. All right. I make the case much better in the article. I make the case much better in the article as to what the problem truly is. The problem truly is that we have trusted charismatic leaders to lead us. And when those organizations and those leaders move on to something else or go into a different direction, or maybe whatever the excuse, we've seen our resources plundered for naught. And this is the nature of TYT. Underneath the leadership of Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, let's go one step further. Because look, here's another reason you're wrong, Cenk. You were wrong. Do we need you? And I'm holding these ideas simultaneously in my head. Cenk Uygur is sacrificing himself to stave off the absolute worst tendencies of MAGA. He's presenting himself as a sacrificial lamb to MAGA to soften the blows. I get it, if that's what you're doing. It's also a possibility that you just want another audience. It's also a possibility that you just want more cash from other people. It's also a possibility that the investments from Jeffrey Katzenberg are coming home to roost and you're having to kowtow to what he wants. It's also a possibility that you simply just want to grow beyond the reach that you have right now. And you become Poly Market Studios and not the TYT Studios. All those things are true. But if on this side, you're absolutely trying to hold the line to make sure that MAGA does not go into their violent tendencies, which we all see they have. They're all talking about it. They all want to do it. That's who they are. If that's what you're doing, Cenk, then you have to understand at the other end of your dialectic, you're over there now. You've surrendered. You've surrendered as a sacrifice to MAGA in order to solve. That's your home now. God bless you. On the other side, we need to fight. We need people who are going to fight. We need people who are going to once more into the breach, get into this fight and go head to head with MAGA in every media category that MAGA utilized over the last 4 years to push America towards the right. Television, internet, streaming, podcasts, radio. Every category is a category that we as leftists and progressives need to fight back. So, Cenk, while you're over there trying to make sure that MAGA does not turn into this raving monster where they begin executing people publicly, because we know historically that appeasement doesn't work, it is vitally necessary that we have an entity, individuals collectively over here fighting like hell. If we don't have that balance, what happens? Somebody in the audience, if all we have representing the left is Cenk Uygur, who is submitting himself as a sacrifice, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's give him some grace. Let's say that he's not a traitor. He's sacrificing himself. However, if all we have is Cenk Uygur on this side, sacrificing himself, bending the knee to MAGA in order to try to stave off the worst tendencies of MAGA, and we have nobody over here fighting, what happens to the Overton window? What happens to the discourse? What happens? America continues to move towards the right. What we have to have instead is decentralized leadership. What does that mean? No more charismatic leaders. What does that mean? No more pouring all of your resources into one organization that's owned by an individual or a small group of individuals. We've done that. And I know in a lot of ways I might be like shooting myself in the foot because it would be easy at this juncture for somebody like charismatic to come along and say, pour all of your resources into me. But that would just replicate the model, and that would present a problem in the future unless that leader is willing to surrender. Unless a leader is willing to surrender their infrastructure to the people. Now we're getting somewhere. TYT is dead. Long live TYT. Unless an individual is willing to surrender their infrastructure to the people, then we would have just wasted and poured our resources into yet another charismatic leader. And I don't think that we can afford to do that. So what do we need to do? Good question. I'm glad you asked. So what do we need to do? Good question. I'm glad you asked. What we need right now more than ever is the ability to organize ourselves and communicate with one another far beyond our individual reaches on social media. What has happened since Elon Musk took over Twitter is that Musk successfully divided us back into our individual silos, making it more difficult for us to cross-pollinate, to even hear from each other, from even being able to see one another's tweets. And so we've been broken down basically back into our very small individual pockets, while simultaneously Elon Musk has coalesced and solidified all of the right wingers across the globe. The same thing has been happening with media. So here's what we need to do. I am talking with several hosts and are going to be talking with many more progressive hosts about creating a decentralized media network that we would all participate in order to give life to it. That's going to take time. But here's what we can do immediately. Two things. Number one, I'm going to ask every single content creator, every single progressive content creator, whether you have a full-fledged show or whether you just put out videos every now and then, or perhaps you only put out shorts, or you write articles, whatever it is that you do, if you are a communicator of progressive and leftist values, here's what I need you to do. I need you to place a call to action in every single segment, every single article. What do I mean? Call to actions like this. Right now, the Islamic and Muslim community, the Arab communities are under attack because of what happened on Bourbon Street. The fangs of American fascism as it relates to Islam, they are out in full force. And so I have asked my supporters, people who watch my show, to organize themselves and to go onto social media and to fight back against every single word that is said against Islam. Why do I say that as a Christian pastor? I say that because I know what happened last time. I know what happened in 2003. I know how many innocent civilians were killed because of America's war in Iraq. And I also know what happens when the cognitive framework, the worldview, the ideas go completely unchallenged. When the ideas of MAGA go unchallenged, it creates a feedback loop that will lead to violence. And if we leave those conversations completely unchecked and nobody from the left, nobody with an alternative view is willing to get in there and fight, even on social media, it creates the idea of a consensus. It gives them the feeling of a mandate. It makes them feel like they're absolutely right because no one has ever told them to their faces that they're absolutely wrong. And so on my show, I am asking every single episode, every single podcast, every single segment, I am putting out a call to action to my supporters, to people who watch my content, people who view my stuff live in the chat rooms. My challenge to them is to go onto social media and to get active on the very issue that I'm talking about. Whatever it is that we talk about, we must activate our audiences. Here's a second thing that you need to do. Moderators from every single show, every single chat room, every single progressive media outlet. If you are a moderator, what I need you to do is I need you to work with your host. And when your host gives that call to action, you need to disseminate that down into the audience. And I need you to motivate the audience to get into action and go do something about it. Here's where we strike back immediately. We're not going to wait until we have the decentralized entity that we're trying to build. That will come in time. We'll get there. But here's how you can get active right now. You are a moderator of any progressive chat. You become a key organizer in this movement because you can take the call to action from that host and you can disseminate it down to every viewer and insist, encourage, and push and say, go get into action. And what does that do? Every day, every episode, every clip, every segment, we have a body of people who get off of YouTube, get off of Facebook, and they get off of Twitch, and they go onto social media and they fight back. And they fight back with the information that they just got from the host. They fight back with the talking points that they just got from the host. They fight back with the team of people that they just squatted up with in the chat room. And you get on social media and you push back against MAGA narratives all day, all night, nonstop. The battle is in the public square, and the public square, for better or for worse, is social media, especially Elon Musk Twitter. Nobody has to do anything I say. I'm simply putting it out here and I'm asking you. for every progressive media host, number one, we need you to give a call to action based on the segment that you're in. Don't let a segment end without a call to action. Number two, the moderators, you take that call to action and you make sure you not only have the call to action, but you have the information, you have the links, you have the memes, you have the graphics, you have whatever the audience is going to need to move into action. The host makes the call to action. The moderator disseminates that call to action to the people in the chat room, and you encourage them every single segment to go onto social media and to fight back. Pick a fight with MAGA. Pick a fight with MAGA. That's what you pick a fight with MAGA. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of their trolling. Troll them better. See, this is the other thing. Like, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'm just going to say what I got to say because we got to say it and we got to move on. We got stuff to do. We got battles to fight. But we run Twitter. We built it. We understand how this place goes. We built social media. Leftist movements help build social media. And we're not shocked. Don't be scared of 4chan trolls. Most of them are insecure men children, emotionally stunted teenage boys trapped in middle-aged men's bodies. We combat them. We fight them, number one, because we're right on the issues. Number two, we're right on the facts. Objective reality aligns with progressive values. That's not necessarily always the case, but overwhelmingly, the objective facts of a matter align with progressive thought, or else we push back against it. And so you not only have the objective truth on your side, but when you go into battle, you will have your squad on your side. You will have your friend from the chat room flanking you on the left and your friend from the other chat room flanking you on the right as you go into battle with MAGA. What difference does it make? Well, come on. If we understand that the rightward shift in this country came as a result of conservative media and conservative social media, then it stands to reason that we have an opportunity to weaken that by getting back into the fight. Cenk, we need you doing this right now, brother. More people would hear you. More people would have heard this from you utilizing the platform that progressives trusted you with than will ever hear it from me and my small little platform. But I'm going to do the best I can to get it out. And I need all of you to share, like, and subscribe to make sure that this message gets out. Here's the next thing that we need you to do. The moderators have their role to play. The supporters, the fans, the listeners, the viewers, you have your role to play on social media, but you have a secondary role to play. You need to become an evangelist for progressivism. You need to understand what it means to be progressive. What are we fighting for? We're fighting for the marginalized and the least of these in every single issue. Simple as that. If there's an underdog, we fight for them. If there's an oppressed group, we fight for them. If there's someone being marginalized, we fight for them. If there's poverty, we fight against it. If there's homelessness, we fight against it. If there's sickness, we fight against it and we advocate for healthcare, Medicare for all. If there's war, we fight against war, but we also recognize the aggressor in the war. We must understand our progressive values and never allow anything to betray it. That's the only way that you will be able to tell your neighbor and your friend about it, your coworker, about why they should support progressive and leftist ideas, because this is what we stand for. What do we stand for? We stand for community. We stand for community. Come, let us reason together. We stand for unity. We stand for equity. Yes, we stand for equity. We stand for opportunity for all. We stand for equity for all. We stand for diversity because diversity is our strength. What does that mean specifically? What does that do? That means that every time you come to the comment section, every time you come into a chat room to support your favorite show, you should bring somebody new. Period. Every time. We don't have the millions of dollars to get our content in front of the eyes of millions of people. The way Ben Shapiro had $100,000 a month to promote his show to the stratosphere that it's at now, progressives will never have that. Not now. But what do we have? We have people who truly believe what we're saying. We have people who truly believe in these values. So what does that mean? You need to go and tell someone else about it. And you need to tell them about this person that you're listening to. and why it is, what you like about them, what's so important about them. You need to send them clips. If your content creator can't create clips all day long, you need to find your favorite section of that show, clip it, record it on your iPhone, record it on your Android, and send it to somebody. You need to be a recruiter for progressive values. So there you have it. There are 3 specific things that we can do right now in the aftermath of the demise of TYT and the fact that we don't have a centralized media platform that can help guide us. We don't have a centralized leader who can help guide us. We are on our own. And so what do? 3 things again. Number 1, I'm asking every content creator, Brother Sam Cedar, I'll reach out to you. We need you to do this. Every single progressive, leftist, liberal, whoever, Midas Touch, all of you, everyone, we need you to not end your segment without a social media call to action. Why is social media call to action? Because number 1, it is significantly important in terms of the public discourse and the public square. That's where the debates are happening, and we need you back into the fight. And so we need, number 1, every host to close their segments with a call to action. Number 2, we need the moderators to connect amongst all moderators, to create your own network of moderators. Set up your own moderators Discord where you can house and store all of the calls to actions, all of the memes, all of the graphics, all of the talking points, all the links to articles. And we need you to bring that to bear in the audience. And when a host gives a call to action, you have information there immediately accessible for the audience to grab and go into action. And to the audience members, you have 2 jobs. Number 1, take that call to action and go be about it. Go do the work. Go pick a fight with MAGA. Go push back against a lie. Go push back against misinformation and disinformation. Go push back against their violent rhetoric. Don't let them stand out there unchallenged. Get into the fight and tag me in it. I'll be more than happy to get into the fight with you. And your second job is to become a full-time evangelist. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about it, invite them. Don't come to an episode of your favorite host without inviting someone else to come watch it with you. And then the last thing that we all can do, community. We need to ensure that our communities are interlocking, that the people who watch me live are watching Sam Cedar live, they're watching the Vanguard live, that they're watching David Doyle, the Rational National live, that they're watching the Humanist Report live, that we're watching Rebecca Azor live, that they're watching Mark Lamont Hill live. Every single one of our audiences should be cross-pollinating and watching each other live so that we can foster a community that they can't foster. The right doesn't have the ability to have community like we do. So that's it. I did not want this video to be a video of me simply going after Cenk Uygur. In fact, I hope that you can see that I'm trying to offer a modicum of grace to him. And when I think about the possibility that he's over there trying to tamper down on the most violent tendencies of MAGA by being a sacrificial lamb, I respect that. I think he's wrong in that you cannot appease a fascist. You cannot appease a Nazi. History has already taught us that. But if that's the role that he has chosen to play, then so be it. Simultaneously, that means that he can no longer identify as a leader of the left because he doesn't speak for us anymore. He can no longer say that he's a leader of the leftist wing of the populist movement because he doesn't speak for us anymore. He can no longer say, and he should no longer be able to parade around, carrying around the idea that he is the owner and the leader of the biggest progressive media network in the country. Why? Because progressives gave him that title. Because progressives built TYT. Our dollars built TYT. Our views, our clicks, our shares built TYT. And we did not build it. Every single one of us, including me, we did not build TYT to have the leader of TYT turn around and go and surrender to MAGA when we need to be fighting MAGA like hell. Be sure to download the article. Be sure to read the article. TYT is dead. Long live TYT. I did a much better job there. I don't have a teleprompter, so I just got to go off the top of my head when I do these things. But it's outlined in the article. TYT as we know it. TYT with a charismatic leader where we trust that his private company, that he's the CEO over and he has all control over. That model is dead. That model cannot be sustained. It has betrayed us too many times. But what people hoped TYT would be should always remain alive. In fact, if the 75 people who work for TYT were given the opportunity to be that decentralized hub, Cenk, I just want you, if you truly are doing what you're doing because of out of fear of what MAGA could become, then hear me out. Turn TYT. I know you won't do it. I doubt very seriously that you will do it, but I got to ask you anyway. Turn TYT into a decentralized co-op where it's not spending an exorbitant amount of money on executive salaries. Step down. You and Anna, step down. Step down. Turn it into a co-op that's headed by some of the key voices that we do trust in, that's headed by a team of leaders that respond to democracy, that respond to democratic votes that come from every single person who subscribes, that comes from every single person who is paying money into it. Mobilize your audience to be the navigator of your entity. Allow TYT to become the entity that propels every single progressive voice above the algorithm. You have the capacity to do that. And if you won't do it, then we will certainly build something else that will do it. I think I've said everything I need to say.